So I was thinking after the Patriots came back and beat the Falcons in Super Bowl 51 about something that I heard Ray Allen say after the 2008 NBA Finals, and it was something that he heard Sam Cassell yelling from the bench during Game 4 of the finals when the Celtics came back and beat the Lakers. They were down 24 points, and we're actually going to talk about that game later in this list. But Cassell was yelling how it's hard to win a championship, and this is what it felt like, the adversity that you face. And it's so true, because it's rare when you can win a championship, especially in professional sports, without adversity. I mean, look at the Cavs from last year. Look at the Chicago Cubs. Both were down 3-1. So it's hard to win a title without any adversity. Clemson over Alabama was down 10 points, I think, in the fourth quarter. So in honor of that, I figured we'd take a look back at the top 10 mentally toughest moments in the history of this championship era of Boston sports since the year 2000. Roll the music. Let's start the top 10. Number 10. The 2004 Patriots fall behind the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 39, 7-0. Now, that was probably the least stressful run of any of the Patriots titles, but they fell behind. And you say maybe that's not the most mentally tough moment. Well, it was the first time that they fell behind all postseason. So it was their first deficit. They eventually seized control of the game, and the Patriots went on to win. As we know, they got up by 10. Adam Vinatieri kicked a field goal late, and they held on 24-21. So that's number 10. Number 9. Super Bowl 38, Patriots and Panthers. And if you remember in that game, the Patriots actually blew, a 21-10 lead? And they lost the lead in the fourth quarter. So the Panthers came back, went up 22-21. So you blow a lead in the fourth quarter. That's not easy. That's tough. You have to be mentally tough to get back, kind of get yourself right again and then regain control of the game. But those two Patriots teams, they really dominated. Probably the least stressful, as I said, of any of those Patriots runs, beginning with that Philly game and then that Carolina game. Although it was a great game, those teams were awesome. Number 8, the 2013 Red Sox, down 5-1 in the 8th inning of Game 2 of the ALCS. Now, if they had lost that game, they would have been on the ropes, to say the least. Down 2-0, going back to Detroit. David Ortiz comes up, hits the grand slam. The cop goes nuts, and we all remember what happened after that. They ended up winning that series in 6 games and went on to win the World Series. But remember, if they had gone back 0-2 to Detroit, John Lackey was going up against Justin Verlander in Game 3. Verlander didn't have a great 2013, but Lackey was 10-13 that year with an ERA of 3.5. So not a great situation for the Red Sox, down 0-2 and going back to Detroit. So that's number 8 on the list. Number 7, the 2011 Boston Bruins, down 2-0 to the Montreal Canadiens in the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. Now, yes, I know they were down 2-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals to the Vancouver Canucks. I get that. However, the Canadiens are the Canadiens. This is a division rival. This is a team that knows you well. The Bruins that year were 2-4 against Montreal during the regular season, so they weren't dominating. And in one of those wins, Tim Thomas, he gave up 6 goals. Not ideal. And keep in mind, that was a year after the Bruins blew a 3-0 lead to the Philadelphia Flyers in the playoffs. So that's fresh on their mind. Now, that was Tuukka Rask, not Tim Thomas. But a rival, you go down, they didn't have home ice advantage, you come back, you win that series in 7, you win another series later in 7, and you go on to win the Stanley Cup. The Bruins, 2011, coming back from down 0-2 to the Canadiens. That is number 7. Number 6, the 2008 Boston Celtics. Now, this game, Game 4, was important. Every Game 4 is always important in these series. It's a swing game. It could go from 2-1 to 3-1 or 2-2, or you could close it out. So this obviously was a huge game. The Celtics were down 35-14 after the first quarter. That was a record at the time. Then they were down 24 points in the third quarter, came all the way back. I think they took the lead with 5 minutes to go on that Eddie House jumper. And if you recall, the Celtics, remember, they lost Game 3 in LA. So it was a 2-1 series. Had the Lakers won Game 4, they would have tied it. And Boston had issues on the road that postseason. Remember, they didn't beat the Hawks once in Atlanta in the first round. Didn't beat the Cavs once in Cleveland, I don't believe, in the second round. Their first road win came against Detroit in the Eastern Conference Finals. So they weren't, tearing it up on the road during that playoff run. They get the huge road win. They come back from down 24 points. They go on a 21-3 run and eventually win that game, and that essentially ended the series. The Lakers did win Game 5, but the Celtics came back to Boston and blew them out in Game 6. So that is number 6 on the list. Number 5, the 2007 Boston Red Sox down 3-1 to the Cleveland Indians in the ALCS. Look, I went back and forth with the Celtics comeback and this comeback in this series, but ultimately the series a lot of times can mean more, and I think in this instance it means a little bit more. The Indians had won 3 straight games. Game 5 in Cleveland. Now, you had Josh Beckett going, and he was unbelievable during that playoff run. And that was a game, if you remember, they had his ex-girlfriend singing the national anthem, and he said it didn't bother him, whatever. They win that game in Game 5. Then they go home to Fenway Park. They win the series. So the Red Sox coming back from 3-1 down. And remember, they just came back a few years earlier, and we're obviously going to get to that series against the Yankees. Tough to do in the span of 5 years. So they come back, they win the 07 ALCS, and go on to beat the Colorado Rockies in the World Series, a World Series that featured no drama whatsoever. Number 4, the 2014 Patriots coming back from 10 points down to beat the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 49. Now remember, they were down, the Patriots were 10 points in the fourth quarter against the best defense in the league. So that, that's huge. You can't just do that, unless you're an elite level team. And as we know, defense is what prevails in the playoffs. Now, luckily for the Patriots, their defense was good enough to win that Super Bowl. We all know Malcolm Butler made the interception there. But the Patriots coming back in that game, Tom Brady had already thrown 2 interceptions. This was a potential dynasty in the making, the Seattle Seahawks. They had won the year before. It could have been the next dynasty, the dynasty after the Patriots, but the Patriots themselves put a stop to that. They come back, and if you want a signature play, Julian Edelman, 3rd and 14, makes the catch, gets his bell rung, gets up. The Patriots continue to drive. They go down and score, and they eventually win the game. And Tom Brady, just at the time cemented his legacy. We thought he wouldn't be able to cement it any further, and then 2016 happened, and we'll get to that. Number 3 on our list, Adam Vinatieri kicks a 45-yard field goal in January of 2002 to beat the Oakland Raiders, or that actually tied the game, but eventually the Patriots would go into overtime and beat the Oakland Raiders 16-13. Now that kick, we were trying to avoid just one play. There were some signature plays we could talk about, but this play was just so ridiculous, it had to be in a category all by itself. It was a blizzard, wind howling, game on the line. That kick would have been difficult if it was just, a regular kick in the playoffs with the season on the line to extend the game. This one, outdoors, wind howling, swirling, blizzard-like conditions, no footing, all kinds of things going on. The tuck rule just happened, and Adam Vinatieri finds a way to make the kick, the greatest kick, unequivocally, in the history of the NFL. They go on to beat the Steelers, and then they go on to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. The Rams Super Bowl was excellent, but that was the biggest play, the mentally toughest moment the Patriots faced that season. Number 2. The 2016 Super Bowl that we just saw. The Patriots down 25 points to the Atlanta Falcons with 2:12 to go in the third quarter. Insane. The biggest comeback in the history of the Super Bowl. Now, the previous record for biggest comeback had been 10, matched by the Patriots 2 years earlier, matched by some other teams. Now, if you remember about this game, which you should because it just happened, Atlanta didn't give this game to the Patriots. Sure, they had a hand in this, but they didn't just hand this game to the Patriots because, yes, they didn't run the ball enough in the second half. They made some spotty decisions. But, even when the Patriots were mounting their comeback, nothing was easy. Nothing was really given to them. They didn't have guys running free. The Falcons didn't muff 2 punts in the red zone or bust the coverage, allowing Chris Hogan to score a 97-yard touchdown. Even when the Patriots were moving the ball, the catches were contested. They had to work for everything that they got. And that is what made it even more miraculous that the Patriots, in this one-game situation, were able to turn it around and win the game, come all the way back, force overtime. And speaking of overtime, since 2009, in order to force overtime, the Patriots needed 2 two-point conversions, as you remember. Since 2009, the Patriots, on 2-point conversions, 6 of 13. That's 46%. So they made six 2-point conversions since 2009, and they made 2 in that game. and they had to have him. And by the way, 3 of the last 4 times the Patriots played in overtime, well, they lost those games as well. So 2 things they weren't great at, 2-point conversions and overtime. They need them both in this Super Bowl, and they get it done on both accounts in the Super Bowl. And just one other thing, they come out after halftime, you think this is when it's going to turn around, and they still struggle. They're coming off. Tom Brady threw the pick 6 in the first half. They come out after halftime. They get a good punt return, a defensive stand, and then they can't move the ball. Then Atlanta scores a touchdown. And they still find a way to rally, to get control of the game, and go on and win the game in overtime. Just an unbelievable game, and the most shocking win I can remember during this run. The most shocking win, but not the most difficult win. That goes to our number 1 mentally toughest moment, the 2004 Boston Red Sox. Not as shocking as what the Patriots did against the Falcons in the Super Bowl, but harder to do. It was over the course of 4 games. You're playing the New York Yankees. This team has essentially owned you since the day Babe Ruth was sold. They were down 3-0, and not just that, they come back to Fenway Park for Game 3, and the Red Sox lose 19-8. It was a laugher. It wasn't even close. Everybody thought they were done. There was no reason to think they weren't done. They lost in heartbreaking fashion in 7 games the year before. Aaron Boone, walk-off home run, extra innings. So you're not feeling all that good. You're feeling bad. Curt Schilling was hurt. The Yankees were Pedro's daddy. The bats were nowhere to be found. There was no reason to think that the Red Sox were going to be able to turn that series around. But mental toughness came through. Kevin Millar kept everyone's head right, and they just didn't care, essentially. The idiots didn't care, stayed with the plan, and slowly things began to turn. If you want to play to point towards, obviously that Dave Roberts stolen base led to the Bill Miller tying single, and then David Ortiz took over, and then Schilling got back on track, and the bloody sock, and Pedro showed up, and Derek Lowe came up huge, and Johnny Damon got hot, and everything happened, and it rolled downhill from there, and they eventually ended up smoking the Yankees in Game 7, and then went on and just cruised past the Cardinals in the World Series. So that's your mentally toughest moment, being down 3-0 to your most hated rival when you were cursed. So an incredible run of Boston sports, and it proves that mental toughness is key in order to win a championship. And if you want an honorable mention, we can just say, because it occurred in Boston, the Ryder Cup from 1999, the U.S., they came back, beat Europe. They were down 10-6 going into the final round. That happened at the Country Club in Brookline. So that's your honorable mention, but we're going to keep it outside of the top 10 that the top 10 list that we just outlined for the 10 championships won in Boston since 2001, a ridiculous run of success in the city of Boston.